When you were asked the question regarding strategic concerns of Israel, you did mention ISIS. If ISIS were to threaten the stability of Jordan, would that change your answer? And what do you see the likelihood of any Jordan's stability in light of ISIS expansion?
Look, the number of strategic challenges to Israel are not 3. They're not even 5. They're at least 10 and maybe more. And ISIS is a direct threat to Israel. There's no question about it. Let me just let you know or share with you the fact that not only is ISIS moving towards Israel in the north, inside of Syria, as it comes down from northern Syria towards the Golan Heights, ISIS is a problem for us on our southern border. There was a radical Islamic movement called Ansar Beit al-Maqdis in Sinai, in northern Sinai, made up of Bedouin tribes who became jihadists. And in the last 2 years, they have declared their loyalty to the caliph of ISIS, known as Mr. Baghdadi, and they are now a part of ISIS. They are not only operating in northern Sinai against the Egyptian army, they have now made common cause with Hamas. And Hamas operatives visit them and work out different avenues of cooperation, including providing medical relief to wounded jihadi operatives from ISIS inside of the Gaza Strip, financial help, and weapons transfers. So ISIS is already, from our standpoint, involved in some of our more important security issues. And I would have mentioned it, but I took the 3 most prevalent that I think are the most urgent matters we have to deal with. But ISIS is a real problem and perceived as in Israel as a problem. Now, of course, if you compare ISIS to Iran, let's take an issue, a comparison that would be reflected in the media. General Petraeus put the Iranian militias in Iraq as a higher order threat than ISIS in the Iraqi context. And in our context, Iran, which is a country of 80-some million people, which is seeking to get nuclear weapons, and I should commend the International Atomic Energy Agency for its report on, in one respect, with its report on the possible military dimensions of the Iranian program, for acknowledging that Iran was seeking nuclear weapons. This wasn't something we made up. It's now been acknowledged. So you have a country seeking to get nuclear weapons, much larger, supporting radical Islam of the Shiite version as opposed to the Sunni version. That for us is a much greater threat than ISIS, although ISIS is a serious problem.
Hi, Steve Swingler, Indiana University. Two-part question about Syria. First, what does Israel make of the Russian intervention in Syria? Is it positive, negative, something else? And then also, people talk about Iran in Syria, but what is the Iranian strategic endgame with their involvement inside Syria? Thank you.
Those are 2 excellent questions, and let me try to answer them. With respect to the Russian intervention, Russia feels it has certain vital interests, but you should speak to somebody from the Russian Foreign Ministry or the Russian Embassy to discuss that. We're aware of what those interests are, and we talk to the Russians. We explain what are our concerns in Syria. They explain what are their concerns in Syria, and we're also trying to make sure that as we each are protecting our own interests, we don't find ourselves we don't find ourselves pulled into any kind of unintended military conflict. That's why this word, which I hadn't heard until this year, deconfliction, is the bottom line of the Israeli-Russian dialogue today, making sure that doesn't occur. Your second question is very important for people to understand. I firmly believe that Iran wants to turn Syria into a province of Iran. And there's a lot of proof of that in terms of Iranian behavior. There are statements by a religious leader very close to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who spoke about Iran, who spoke about Syria as the 35th province of the Iranian state. But there's a lot more evidence of this than just the particular statement by a religious figure. We have here one of the people who came in my team, the chief of staff of the foreign minister, who is also the prime minister, General Dr. Shimon Shapira, one of our leading expert, I think, in the state of Israel on Hezbollah and Iranian intervention in the Levant. And Shimon pointed out to me the role of Iran in spreading Shia Islam inside of Syria. If you're just there for a military relationship, then all you do is, I don't know, build a few bases, train a few soldiers, and that's it. But if you're involved in creating a social and political change in Syria that incorporates Syria ultimately into the Iranian state, then part of the Iranian modus operandi is actually converting Sunni Muslims into Shiites. And that's what they're doing in Syria. So I think we have to be very cautious about this. I can tell you this, that at the end of the day, if Iran is able to incorporate Syria into the Iranian state, that is something which operates against Israel's most vital security interests. Because it's not just a question of Shiite mosques in Syria. It's a question of creating the infrastructure for a permanent Syrian military deployment against Israel from the north. And that's something which we cannot accept.
Ambassador Gold, my question on Syria, and a couple years ago, Turkey and Israel seemed to be on the same side, wishing to see Assad is gone. And I am wondering if you think you're still on the same side with Turkey on Syria, and if you could also kind of talk about what would be the couple of top interests areas with Turkey would be beneficial for two countries if the relations are mended. Thank you.
Well, with respect to the internal situation in Syria, if I didn't make it clear before, I'll make it clear now. We have been very careful not to intervene in the Syrian civil war, except if certain vital Israeli interests are affected, such as the transfer, as I said before, of advanced weaponry to Hezbollah by Iran or by anybody else. But we also have had a humanitarian interest. We cannot ignore the suffering of people in areas near our border. And therefore, Israel opened up a field hospital in the Golan Heights to take care of Syrian refugees who needed urgent medical help. We also opened up our hospitals in the northern part of Israel as part of that effort. But we're not getting drawn into the question of who should replace Assad or how a future Syrian government may be selected. That is not something which we want to be pulled into. As far as Turkey goes, both of us have an interest that Syria not be used as a base for threatening our vital interests. But I wouldn't think it would be useful for me to go into any further detail beyond that.
Well, let me push on that, though. How would you respond to the following question? Is Assad part of the problem, and or should he be included, in your view, in some way as in the solution?
If you take the position that the government of Israel has taken the last number of years, that we are not going to intervene in the Syrian civil war, it is not useful for us to start commenting on the relative merits of different leaders or organizations inside of Syria. We have to protect what are the vital interests of Israel and not get pulled in endlessly into this conflict.
Right, but if I were to ask you whether you want the black flag of ISIS flying over Damascus, you would probably say no.
Well, if I told you I didn't want to be afflicted with cancer, it wouldn't mean that I would be an advocate for heart attacks.
No, I think you answered the question.
Is there an out-of-the-box way to have a new conversation about settlements?
Well, I was actually going for the bigger issue, which is how to resolve this whole thing, and settlements are a clause in the issues that are part of any final status deal. I do think that sometimes the issue has been overstated, and you see that in interviews with Mahmoud Abbas, for example. There is an amazing interview that he gave to Bernard Avishai a few years back in the New York Times Magazine, and you could actually Google Bernard Avishai, Mahmoud Abbas, and find this article. And in it, Mahmoud Abbas makes a statement. He says, you know, I was willing to give Olmert 1.9% of the West Bank, and the settlements only take up 1.2%. Now, I think actually Mahmoud Abbas's numbers are off. But it doesn't matter. That's what he thought, and that's what he said. So if that's all you're talking about, from his perspective, then if you add a new row of houses in Ma'ale Adumim, what are we talking about? Are we talking about some substantial change in the geographic situation in the West Bank? Certainly not, from what he said. So I think somehow that issue has been a bit overstated. It's a point of vulnerability for Israel, because Israel's perspective on settlements, from a legal standpoint, from the standpoint of the Israeli Supreme Court, is one in which this is something which is Israel's legal right for Israelis who want to voluntarily live there, and it's not a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. But that isn't widely supported in the international community, so if we have a disadvantage, it's something which we pay a price for. But I think the stress in our rethinking and trying to put up new ideas and thinking out of the box has to be our overall approach to resolving the conflict. And settlements are one clause in it, and not the most important clause. Problem.
We have a question from the overflow room that Daily Beast wrote today, reported on an article that the Russians are supplying military equipment to Hezbollah. Would you care to comment?
No, only in our discussion with the Russians, we have made very clear that the supply of advanced weaponry to Hezbollah, chiefly by Iran, is a serious problem for Israel and puts our vital interests at risk.